Good morning, directors. We do have a quorum, and so we'll call the inaugural meeting of the Electoral Services Committee to order for January 11th and proceed to the first order of business, which is the election of the chair for 2023. And the procedure we will use today is the same as we use for the board chair elections, and seeking nominations from the floor. And we'll continue with the vice chair once the chair has been elected. So if I may ask for nominations for position of chair, please. Director Mawhinney.
I would like to nominate Gerald Wally for chair. I believe his experience on this committee will be valuable in the chair role. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Director Wally, would you accept that nomination? Thank you. Are there further nominations for the position of chair? For the third and last time, are there nominations for the position of chair? Hearing none, I will declare Director Wally elected as chair for 2023. Thank you. And now position of vice chair. Take nominations from the floor, if I may please.
I would like to nominate Mark Vanesh for vice chair.
Thank you, Director Mawhinney. Director Vanesh, would you accept that nomination?
I do.
Thank you very much. Are there other nominations for vice chair position? For the third and last time? And hearing none, I will declare Director Vanesh as the vice chair for 2023 for the East Committee.
Thank you.
And now, Director Wally, would you care to man the controls?
Thank you, Tom. Okay, the first item of business is the adoption of the public agenda. Need a motion for adoption, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Petitions and delegations. We have Electoral Area C Integrated Community Sustainability Plan, Nick Robinson and Lanny Keller. Just please come forward. And you have 10 minutes, and then afterwards there'll be an opportunity to ask you questions. Go ahead.
Thank you. Lanny hasn't yet arrived from the ferry, but I think I can give you the information you need.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present to board members here. Lanny Keller and I are representing a advisory group that was set up by the regional district to work with staff and a consultant, to work with Meredith Starkey, and I think Shannon Gordon is on with us too. And we did that and came up with an integrated community sustainability plan, if I can abbreviate that, just ICSP from now on. And that plan is supposed to be a foundational document setting direction for, in this case, Area C, and then it would give direction to things that would come after, like developing official community plans or revising community plans. We, staff and the consultant, came up with an ICSP that was put out to the public. It was published locally, put on the SRD website, and community feedback was solicited. We got back just over 100 questionnaires, and at that point, the ICSP was amended without involvement of our community advisory group. So what we're here for today is you have as a later agenda item that ICSP for approval and submission to the board as a whole, and we're asking for some amendments to it. The crux of the issue is around the vision statement. The plan itself that's attached to your agenda has a lot of pages, but the heart of it is a vision statement and some goals, just a page or two of information. And the vision statement sets out what the community wants to be, what its values are, and gives direction to the whole rest of the planning process. It's a single sentence, but it's important. And in the vision statement that we had all come up with, our advisory group, staff, and the consultant, we had as a strong value the community's desire to maintain its rural character. Rural character isn't defined in the ICSP, but it presumably includes things like relatively low population densities outside of designated settlement areas, low traffic, quiet, lots of green space, things like that. And in fact, that rural character value has been important in Area C planning for a long time. It's actually a central value in the Quadra Island official community plan, and I'm told from people in the Outer Islands that when they develop their official community plan, there's a good likelihood that they would include that rural character value in it. The problem is that the amendments that were done after the surveys came in really gutted that rural character value by changing the wording to say that the community would balance its desire for a rural character with a desire for community vibrancy. And community vibrancy isn't defined either, but we assume that since you have to balance rural character against it, that it involves to some extent some different or even opposite things. And it would be hard to see in, say, an OCP or a zoning bylaw how rural character would have any force once it had to be balanced by this undefined community vibrancy. So the heart of what we're asking is to change the vision statement back so that we have rural character as a central value. On the handout that I think you all have, if you look at page 5, the top half of page 5 has 3 versions of the vision statement. The top one of those 3 and highlighted in bold font is the words we're concerned with. So our whole presentation is just concerned with a few words, but those few words have the capacity to change the whole intent and meaning of the ICSP. So the top version has the full rural character value in it. That's the one we had all agreed on. The second version is the amended version, which is attached to your agenda today, which says rural character has to be balanced against community vibrancy. And then the third version is what we're asking you to amend it to, which would put back full force rural character value. Why do we think this is a good idea? Do Area C residents really want that full force rural character value? And we think they do. For a start, our advisory group has 14 people on it, and we've got views all over the place. One of the interesting things about being in a rural area is everyone is thrown together. So we've got loggers and teachers and entrepreneurs and everything from tree huggers to rednecks. And But on our group, we are united. We think there should be a strong rural character value in there. What about the survey results? Did the survey results somehow tell us that there were a lot of people out there in the community that didn't like that? And quite the opposite. Actually, on the covering letter that you're getting with that agenda item, the staff have said that there was a 64 to 75% of respondents were satisfied or very satisfied with the core components of the ICSP, considering the diversity of the areas represented by this plan and the inherent challenges of finding common ground and balancing competing interests. This represents a significant consensus. And we think that too. The thing is, remember when you read that is referring to the original ICSP, the one that had the full force rural character value in it. If you look at the top of page 4 of your handout, and there's more detail in there than I've got time to go into now, but we've done a bit of an analysis of those surveys coming back, and 47% were very satisfied with the vision statement that had the strong rural character value. And then of those, a bunch more were somewhat satisfied, and then there were others who were not satisfied. But the thing is that of the people who weren't very satisfied, when you looked at comments, and something like 43 of the survey respondents made comments, the comments were more often that they wanted less protection than the proposed vision statement had in it, but there was a significant minority who actually wanted more, who said we should get rid of fossil fuels right away and things like that. So if you look at that analysis of those results, the strong rural character value statement is in the middle of community opinion in Area C. And we're afraid that if that strong value is taken out of there, it's going to cripple the development and revision of our OCPs in the future, because we're supposed to take our key off the ICPS. And the ICPS, we don't want that to say that we don't have a strong rural character value. Just for how this has got practical importance, as I was looking through your agenda today, I was flipping through the items, and there was one about a rezoning proposal, and it just had the results of a meeting where people had spoken, and I just noticed right there one of the speakers was speaking in favor or against, doesn't matter which, but they were citing rural character. That's a criterion they were using to evaluate that rezoning proposal. So we've set out very clearly there the changes that we want. It only amounts to a few words, but it's absolutely critical for the meaning. And so that's what we're asking for.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Do the directors have any questions?
I just have one question about your,
Oh, sorry. You can speak first, but let the chair recognize you first.
through the chair, is that, I have to do that, is that right? Yeah, okay.
I just want to recognize the speaker so we don't all try to talk at the same time. So go ahead and ask your question.
Just regarding the task force that you have, you mentioned you're a really diverse group of people. Can you also talk about the diversity of the ages and the number of young people on that committee?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we're almost all old. And, but, you know, we had meetings in the middle of the day on weekdays, so young people who are working with 3 kids basically couldn't be on that task force. So the age distribution is heavily weighted to older people. That's partly why I mentioned that I've raised 4 kids on Quadra Island. So although we're old, we're not completely out of touch with the issues of younger people. One of our daughters and her husband and 2 little girls lived on Quadra for years renting places. So we know about the housing problems, things like that. Actually, if you think I'm strong on rural character, you should hear our daughter.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions? Seeing none? Oh, you have a question?
I do.
Go
Is that
ahead.
okay? Sorry, Gerald. Gerald, may I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair to Nick, I noticed that you have 2 suggestions. You have a suggested change in the vision statement. And then also another one in goal number 12 under character and culture. And you're asking to add or to remove community vibrancy and diversity and replace that with the word peaceful. And I'm curious how you would feel about replacing the word peaceful with the word vibrant.
That is a good question too. We sort of addressed that in our recommended amendment to the vision statement. You'll see that what we've got in there in bold in the 3rd version is that the communities would maintain their rural character and community vitality. So we're not against vitality. And in fact, the reaction from our committee when we looked at the wording saying that rural character had to be balanced against community vibrancy was sort of to say, who says we're not vibrant? And what's this problem where you can't have rural character and vibrancy too? So the community vibrancy wording is kind of strange. We looked at all the comments on the questionnaires about the vision statement. There were 2 of them mentioned community vibrancy. This is out of 100 people filled out that question. And so I don't see a great push for that. But if we want, as I say, we put in community vitality in our vision statement one. So you were saying, sorry, Robin, I think we wouldn't want vibrancy. It's vibrant.
What I had wondered is, you had, the very bottom of page 5.
Yes.
You mentioned the requested amendment would be returning to the phrase peaceful rural character. And I'm wondering about how, like, vibrant rural character sits with you.
I just don't see a reason for doing that. Again, to me, it comes back to this view that somehow vibrancy and rural character are not the same thing. There was almost no feedback that we saw calling for that, you know, the odd word, the odd comment. But I guess if I had to say, we'd probably rather have vibrant rural character than not get our amendments at all.
Thank you. And Chair, I have a question for you because I noticed that on the agenda, we were going to be hearing from Nick Robinson and Lanny Keller, and Lanny Keller was late because of the ferry, and I believe she's here now, so I'm not sure if she has space to speak or not, but I'm just throwing that over to you.
If she's here now and she has additional information we haven't heard, then we will have her speak.
I missed Nick's introductory remarks, so yeah, I did have the introduction and conclusion to this presentation, so I'm not sure how it occurred when I wasn't here, but we want to thank the SRD and the consultant for good work on producing this ICSP in short order. It was a very quick process, and we really appreciate all the efforts that went into it. The task force was convened in August, and by November, the task force, the consultant, and the SRD planner had come up with a draft proposal, which was then circulated to the community, and that draft was commented on by the community. But subsequently, because there was a very short timeline, some amendments were made to the document that was subsequently published and what you're receiving today. So there are, in addition to those first two changes that you referenced, Robin, there are 2 more on the back page, just FYI. And we appreciate that there was a deadline for completing this, but the draft that was circulated for community comment is not actually, is changed in a few significant ways from what's now being proposed. So we'd like you to be aware of that. And our request is that you will look at the 4 small but significant changes that are requested, and the task force is unanimous in making that recommendation.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the speaker before she steps down?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, appropriate to move receipt of, could we have someone move receipt of that presentation, please?
I will. Move receipt.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, next item of business. The adoption of the minutes for September 21.
I'll move to adopt the minutes.
Comments? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number 2, the minutes of the special budget meeting, December 8, 2022. For adoption? We need a mover?
If I have comments or adjustments on it, is
After
that,
it's
is this
moved and
appropriate?
seconded, then we'll
Thank
give an opportunity.
This one always has troubles. It's clerical errors, if you will. They're minutes of the meeting, so it's not a space for, you know, to make editorials or changes to it. They're adoption of the minutes as they happen. If there's errors or omissions, happy to accept those, but if you're thinking it's a time for make comments and that, it's adoption of minutes.
Yeah, I was thinking just not making comments on it, but just making additions to, I think, something was missed.
Well, if there's errors to the minutes, that's your opportunity.
Okay. I just would like to add that during that time, there was given the opportunity for people or directors to submit their comments through email, and that the amendment, I guess in regards to my ones, it says that I didn't make any amendment suggestions, and I wanted to just be clear that it was the option was given to be able to provide that over email.
Yeah, no problem, but that's not an error in the minutes, if you will. Like, if at that meeting you didn't make comments or amendments or whatever, we capture what happened in that meeting, and then for those, let's say, wasn't there, that should be a reflection of what happened. So I don't think, based on what you said, there's any errors or omissions.
Okay, was that moved and seconded, Mr. Gates?
Not yet, Mr. Chairman.
Could we have a mover, please?
I'll move it.
I'll move receipt, and I'd like to speak to it.
Go ahead.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
All right, go ahead, Director.
The only question that I had when I looked over the minutes, and it is more of a technical concern, Dave, and I wasn't sure if it matters or not, but I did notice that when I entered the chambers and when I departed the chambers, it's noted, but it doesn't note when Director Vanesh left. And at actually the very second to last item has Director Vanesh's name mentioned at 3:34, so I'm not sure if he was here during Director Rice's conversations or why. He's actually named twice during the last several items, and I thought maybe there was a bit of a mistake and it should have been Director Rice's name.
I'm not certain. The minutes are a reflection of what happened. If you were there and you have identified an error, this is an opportunity to correct it. I don't remember them verbatim, and if you weren't there, I don't think there's a correction to be made unless Director Rice or Vanesh has an error in the minutes. That, again, these are just minutes reflecting what happened in the meeting, and when you accept them, you're accepting them as they happened, and if there was errors, this is an opportunity to say, oh, there's an error.
Again, I can speak on that. Mark's name was mentioned in my meeting because there was some things that we had discussed that perhaps maybe down the road you and I would share. So that's how that came about. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I could perhaps clarify the point that Director Mawhinney raised. We do, as a general rule, record when directors arrive and when they leave a meeting. And we do that for a number of reasons, but most importantly, I think, is where there are motions that are made and passed, then it's important to know which directors were in the room when the vote was held. So that is something we typically do, and I do recall, and the minutes do reflect that Director Vanesh was here until the end of that meeting. That's what our minutes show.
Here to the end of John Rice's meeting?
Yeah.
All right, I'll call the question on adoption. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Business arising? Seeing nothing. Move on to staff reports. Integrated Community Sustainability Plan for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Comments? Go ahead,
So,
Director.
So just on receipt, I think Meredith will speak to the report, Mr. Chair, and
Thank you.
then I believe we have a consultant as well.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, so Shannon Gordon is our consultant with WCE Engagement and Planning, and will present shortly on this plan. Do you have the presentation, sorry? Yep. Are you ready for it now? Okay. Thanks. And they've all left the room, but thank you to the task force members that came as a delegation this morning. And, pardon? Yeah, okay. So, next slide, please. So Shannon will present the rest of this presentation, but I do want to give some introduction. So the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan is something that we have been engaged in with for some time. It's starting back in 2019, which will become more clear in the next slide. But ultimately what it is, sorry. Ultimately, what it is, it's a long-term plan that's developed in consultation with the community, and it serves as a guidance document for other planning documents and other policy decisions that are made. So unlike an OCP or a zoning bylaw in itself, it's not a regulatory document. There's nothing enforceable within it. So what it does is that it gives us an opportunity to bring people together to find consensus. This is notoriously difficult in any community. Quadra is not unique in that regard. And even amongst our task force, the delegation this morning indicated consensus. I did at least hear from one member of the task force who did not come to that same conclusion, and felt like the changes that were made to the draft were necessary. So even amongst the task force and in the community, this is not an easy, straightforward thing. But what an OCP or what an ICSP does is it brings us together to start having those conversations, and it gives us a starting point so that we can continue having those conversations about balance and trade-offs and all of the things that we need to do when we get into those more detailed planning documents and making decisions that are enforceable. And then just as information, this grant was this was funded through a $70,000 grant through Strategic Priorities Fund. That's a gas tax fund administered by UBCM. Next slide. So as I mentioned, this process started in 2019. That's when we were awarded the grant, and that's when this project first started. There was a series of public consultation events that happened at that time. There was a workbook, there were in-person open house sessions. There was a public survey that went out. And so that served as the basis for when we relaunched the project in August of this year. So after pausing for COVID and a number of other challenges related to this project. So through the relaunch, we established the task force, which was a 14-member crew. And we'll go into more detail about who was on that. With members of Quadra and the Outer Islands. And as was mentioned in the delegation this morning, those meetings were held during the day. That was a decision made basically to try and encourage greater participation from the Outer Islands, that we had heard that it was too difficult for people to travel in the evening. There's always, again, trade-offs that are made, and so we knew that we were not capturing every voice in the community, which is why then we followed that up with a public survey. But I will pass this to Shannon because she is the person who led the survey and can better speak to that part of the process. So.
Great. Thanks, Meredith. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
You can. Okay, great. Thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here. I just a little bit of background. I have actually worked on ICSPs since they were first developed. In fact, I was part of the team that developed the first in Canada here in Whistler back in 2004, 2005. And the one that we developed here in Whistler was then used as the model for Canada when FCM and the federal government rolled out the funding to do this kind of planning in communities, this kind of sort of comprehensive high-level sustainability planning. So I've been at this for a while, and I work with, I'm based in Whistler, but work with communities around BC on these kinds of plans, but also other kinds of planning and engagement initiatives. So just I'll take you through the rest of the timeline. And as was already mentioned, it was tight. We didn't have a lot of time to finish off the project. So we really got started in earnest in August once the task force was established. We had the first meeting with that group at the end of the month. So in the summertime, we thanked them and we appreciated them engaging at that time, not the best time we wanted to get started. So worked with them between August and November to get that core content for the ICSP done in a plan on a page format. I'll give you a quick snapshot of what that looks like in a minute. So by early November, we were ready to go out to the community So we put the draft plan on a page out to the community for feedback mid to late November, and then we're into December to analyze those results, incorporate changes based on those results into the plan, and finish the project by the deadline, which was December 31st. So, you know, things were tight. We were sort of, you know, up against a bit of a rock and a hard place, and you know, to push it forward. And the task force, you know, so appreciated their involvement because they were very committed and passionate, and would I'm sure have liked more time on this. So, you know, thanks to them for one, stepping up, contributing their time, and then doing their best to engage in a really quick process. So here we are in January with the draft plan. And next slide, please. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. Oh, here's the when I reference plan on a page, this is essentially what we're talking about. So vision, and then you'll see the 5 systems. That's sort of the framework that we worked within to create some, you know, clarity and distinction between essentially to cover the whole community, but within some systems that we could work within. And then we also identified some key initiatives at the bottom there. So that's the plan on a page that I'm referencing when I speak to that terminology. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more detail on the task force and then what we did with them. So recruitment was sort of July through August, as mentioned. Late August was the first meeting. I think staff did a great job to recruit the group. You know, it really was an open call, and not only an open call, but also effort to reach out and especially to get Outer Island representation. You know, and different ages. So it was open to different ages. It's obviously hard, you know, as a parent myself, it's really hard to engage in these groups when you've got a day job and kids in the evening. So it is notoriously difficult to engage that age of individual, and that's no matter the community or the area. So in the end we ended up with 14 members, including 5 from the Outer Islands. So and then we knew that we would go out to the public, you know, and make sure that we captured a greater diversity of citizens and community members. So that was our plan from the beginning, was to work closely with the task force through a multiple meeting process, and then make sure we were going out to the community more broadly. So again, thanks to the task force for their time and commitment and passion for the project and for the place. Back up just one slide for just a sec. So then the process to develop the plan on a page really was, you know, I started with, we didn't want to lose the really good work that was done previously. So I spent a bunch of time going through what had been done before, you know, the draft content and the input from community members and stakeholders and associations and organizations. And because we were on an abbreviated time frame, it brought draft vision and goals to the task force, and then we went through an iterative process to, you know, refine those with the task force members. So we spent the bulk of the time with the task force on the vision and goals, and then we had a little bit of time to identify. So what are some of the forces affecting Area C? You know, it's sort of like a SWOT analysis, but slightly different. It was a force field analysis, but I won't go into the details of that. And then we identified some key initiatives, just some ideas for implementation into the future, how to move the ICSP forward. And then the task force had a little bit of opportunity for feedback on those. I'll admit, not a lot. So those are in the plan, but they're just ideas. Really, the crux or the core of the ICSP are the vision and goal statements. And just a quick note on those, that they, as Meredith mentioned, directional, they're meant to, one, bring people together and provide a bit of a compass. Like I like to think of it, and it's, as a compass or a North Star. It's meant to be high level, so it's not meant to be super prescriptive. The vision and goal statements aren't meant to be super prescriptive. They shouldn't, be overly constraining in terms of how you move forward. They need to provide some room for, dialogue and discussion and more detailed decisions coming later, through your more detailed plans and regulations. So whenever we get into something that's too prescriptive, part of what I try to do is, okay, what's the high level intent without being really prescriptive and constraining? That comes later through your more detailed plans and regulations, as mentioned. So that's just an addition to make in terms of what the ICSP and those vision and goal statements are meant to do and not meant to do. Okay, next slide, please. So public engagement. So after we engaged and got to that place with the plan on a page through the task force process, then we went out to the community, and we did this slightly differently. We knew, we wanted to make sure that this content and the feedback opportunity, the input opportunity got out to everybody. So we not only did we do this online, sort of feedback form or survey, but we also embedded the ICSP plan on a page and the feedback form right in the Discovery Islander, so that it was on paper out in the throughout Area C, and then people were able to. They could either see that and log in online and do it online, or submit the feedback form through some drop-off locations. So essentially what we did, we put out the plan on a page, the vision and goals. We asked 2 questions. How satisfied are you with the vision and goal statements? And any changes? Would you like, would you suggest any changes? And then for the initial ideas for those key initiatives, we asked people to rank them, which were more important, and did they have any other ideas? So we kept it, simple, straightforward, so that we could maximize the number of people responding. And as I mentioned, so it was online and on paper in the Discovery Islander, and thank you to them for allowing us that channel. Just the right column shows how this opportunity was communicated. Besides the Discovery Islander, it went out through a number of channels as well. So we really wanted to get this opportunity out to the broader community. So that's what that looked like. So just quickly on satisfaction with the vision and goals, and Nick already referenced this. There was a high level of satisfaction with the statements, which was great to hear. So we weren't working with, feedback that was like, toss it out, start again. By no means. There was a high level, ranging from, and so when I say 65 to 75%, that represents the combined dark green, light green, so because the dark green is very satisfied and the light green was somewhat satisfied. So in all, satisfaction ranged from 65 to 75% on the vision, and then the goal statements within each of those 5 areas. So that was great to learn. And next slide, please. So then just getting into what we heard from when we asked the question, what would you change? So yes, high level satisfaction, but still some recommended changes from the public. So on the vision, we heard, and now don't forget what we're trying to do here is we've been working with the task force, and they were 14 members, but now we're going to the broader community. So this is our opportunity to make sure that anything that wasn't represented by the task force, we're now integrating from broader community members. So what we heard on the vision was too focused on the environment. We need some better balance between environment and community, environment and economy. We heard some displeasure with the use of quiet. And this is where we got into, sort of this desire for, vibrancy. Vitality is another word. It's also a good word. And diversity, so not just sort of quiet retirement, but there's also another constituency out there that wants vibrancy, vitality, and diversity. So that's what we heard with respect to the vision statement. On the right side, there's just some sample comments there. I'm not going to read those or go through them, but just to give you a flavor of some of the comments that we heard and what we were trying to reflect in the changes we made. So that's what we heard, and we made some changes then based on what we heard to the vision. Next slide. So in the climate change natural environment system, what we heard was, and oh, sorry, one thing to mention on the lens that I used for, taking in or incorporating comments was one, repeat. I heard something more than just once. So, it was repeated. It could have been that it was repeated 3 times. It doesn't mean it was repeated 30 times, but I was using my judgment and years of experience analyzing public input and then deciding, what's valid. So repeat comments was one thing that I used. And then also sometimes somebody would identify something or flag something that I thought was, oh, you know what, that's a good catch. A statement is maybe too constraining, or we just missed something. So I was using those 2 things as a way to judge whether to incorporate public feedback or not. So in this system, one of the things that we heard was be clear that protection is not just about sensitive areas, that it's also about natural areas more generally. And even though the statement that was implied in the statement, it maybe wasn't as clear as it could have been. So I agreed with that comment and made an adjustment to the third statement around protection in that column. And then the need to underscore sustainable management of natural resources. Again, it was there, but I agreed that it could have been strengthened. So I made very slight tweaks to that to strengthen and clarify that piece. Okay, next slide, please. So under developed areas, housing and infrastructure, we heard clearly on this one that we had framed the need for housing really, and it was really about, okay, yes, housing, but we still need to protect natural areas and protect peaceful rural character. And what we heard from the feedback was, yes, don't forget though that housing really is in the service of diverse, vibrant community. And so that wasn't reflected in the statement. So we didn't lose the focus on housing, balanced with protecting natural areas and the environment. We just added in the need to make sure we added in the piece to clarify that housing is in the service of, diverse resident population, families, workers, et cetera. So that was an addition made. And then just somebody commented on the negative impact. There's a statement around negative impact on surrounding areas is avoided. And in reflection, that was a little bit too strong. Again, trying not to corner you in future decision making. There are going to be, trade-offs. Sometimes there will be, development for housing may be in, a greenfield site. Obviously, you're going to try to do it in such a way that it minimizes impacts as much as possible. But upon reflection, the word avoided was a bit too constraining. So we just scaled that back a little bit to give you some, wiggle room. And again, future decision making and dialogue and discussion, through other planning and conversations with the community will make those final decisions. This is just providing high level direction. Okay, next slide, please. So community well-being and individual health. Again, so this was where we heard, similar to what we'd heard in the vision, not enough about diverse multi-generational community and the vibrancy piece. So we made some changes in that in the goal statements there to reflect that, similar to what we had done in the vision statement, to make sure that we were bringing both of those pieces in, and they can live hand in hand. you can have rural and vibrant. It's maybe that the vibrancy and that focus is in core areas versus, everywhere. So those discussions and those details can come later and be clarified later. Okay, next slide, please. Economy and employment. So again, here's, this need to bring in the more diverse resident population, and make sure that that's part of this, because we were very focused through input from the task force on that economic and industrial activity would protect the environment, not encroach in natural areas, and that's all good, and we didn't water that down, but we just wanted to make sure that it was clear that, again, it's in service of employment and, not livability, sorry, livelihoods, so that people can be employed locally, as well. And then just prescribing light industrial, we had light industrial, and in fact, sort of that would constrain you a little bit because light industrial has a definition, and that might have precluded some small scale forestry and some other things. So we just wanted to back off that again to not constrain you, but be clear that, obviously industrial activity of whatever kind is meant to be, done in such a way that it's mitigating or minimizing impact on natural environment as much as possible. So just coming off the prescriptive nature of what that statement had in it previously, and just not wanting to constrain things that and decision making that would come more detailed later. Next slide. Oh, and then governance and reconciliation. There wasn't any, in my opinion, based on public feedback, there was no sort of consistent repeat changes to that section. People were generally happy with what was there and no issues identified. Okay, key initiatives. We, again, as I mentioned, we asked for people to rank those key initiatives. So this is the ranking that we received. So we did, a calculation based on weight, the weighted rank of these. So we've just ranked the first 10, and just quick on the first top 3. So the first was around housing, the desire to have a better understanding and plan for the housing needs. Second was related to climate change mitigation and adaptation planning, a desire for that kind of an initiative to move forward. And then also looking at infrastructure services, and what that looks like now, especially with respect to changing, climate and adaptation that needs to happen there. So very quick, I want to make sure we don't go too over time. Next slide, please. And this is what the vision, so this is now the snapshot or the vision and goals, the plan on a page piece that is inserted into the full ICSP plan now, but here's the core. This is the sort of the compass or the North Star, and can hopefully provide that function as you get into more detailed planning and decision-making moving forward for Area C. Yeah, next slide. I think that's it for me. I'll turn it back over to Meredith. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Just take a quick break for 2 minutes, washroom break for a second, be right back.
So, Mr. Chairman, you currently have a motion on the floor to receive.
For
which is not-
receipt.
Not being voted on yet, just so you know.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Or thank you, Tom. Okay, we're back in session. We're still on receipt. Do we have any discussion from directors? No. Do you wish to speak? I think we've already moved receipt, have we not? Oh, we haven't received, okay. We're looking for a discussion.
I'm
Go
turning the
ahead.
mic on. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to have heard from the consultant, Shannon Gordon. That was really a great overview for anyone that didn't have a chance to read it yet. It's a very thorough, layered document, and I really appreciate the energy and efforts of the task force and staff, as well as the WSC engagement. Big thanks to the 100+ community members who took the time to provide thoughtful input and provide a diversity of opinions and feedback on the draft plan. I really enjoyed reading the direct comments attached and hearing what folks want more focus on. As a foundational document focused on sustainability, this ICSP provides strong direction and many great ideas for Area C planning. I have a couple of questions through to staff, if I may.
Go right ahead.
One of the first question would be, how were the Webukai First Nation and other First Nations with traditional territories in Area C engaged in this process, and was there feedback?
Thank you through the chair. So there's actually 23 area nations in Area C that have some sort of stake or claim. So we reached out to every nation, all 23, multiple times actually, back in 2019, and then direct solicitation to their referral offices as indicated as a preference by each of those nations. We did not receive any response, except for a couple to say that they did not wish to comment. So, thank you.
Thank you. And my second question through to staff is that the report mentions in sort of at the beginning of the report section that in Area C planning, decisions are guided by an OCP for Quadra Island and by a rural land use plan that covers the large remaining section of Area C. I'm just hoping you could clarify for me if the rural land use plan that you mentioned is the document also known as the Desolation Sound Land Use Bylaw. I thought that document covered only select islands like Reed Island and Sonora and Morel, but not the inlets, et cetera?
That is correct. Both of those things are correct, yes. It applies to part of the remaining of Area C, but not to all of the remainder.
Okay, good. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure, 'cause I'm just learning. Thank you very much. Those are all my questions, but I do have a deferral motion. Is that
Well-
appropriate now or later?
Let's wait till after receipt then.
Oh, I thought we just did receiving it.
We haven't called the question yet.
Oh, my bad.
So I'll call the question now on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, and a recommendation?
I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that the task force brought these 4 minor recommendations that they would be more comfortable seeing in the final draft the final document. And I would really like it if the task force could have a chance to discuss those alterations or suggestions with the consultant, and then we could kind of get a final
Do you
on
have a
those 4.
motion, Director?
Oh, yeah. How do I say that as a motion? That's the question.
It's, if I may, Mr. Chair, it sounds like you would like to defer the comments from the delegation back to the task force and the consultant.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Any comments on the motion? Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, next item. Development variance permit application, DV 5D 22 Lamb for receipt.
Move receipt.
Do we have a seconder? On receipt.
I believe John will speak to this, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. An application has been received to allow the proposed construction of a 45.7 square metre garage, family room addition to a single-family dwelling to be located 4.5 metres from the front lot line. The zoning bylaw requires a minimum front yard setback of 7.5 metres. The purpose of the new structure is to replace the previous garage that was converted into living accommodations in 2021 and to reduce the steep slope of access to the house which currently exists and is regarded as a safety hazard during the winter months. The new structure would also increase lot coverage to 20.4%, which is 0.4% greater than permitted, by the zoning bylaw. We have received no comments from neighbours regarding this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any comments from directors? Okay, call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. On the recommendation. Need a motion.
I'll move item B.
Need a seconder. All right, any discussion? All right, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 3, development variance permit, DV6D22 Fraser, for receipt.
Move receipt.
I second that.
All right.
I believe John will speak to this as well, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. An application has been received to allow the construction of a 190 square metre shop, which will be 6.5 metres in height, which is 0.5 metres higher than permitted by the bylaw, and also 4.5 metres from the side lot line, which is 3 metres closer than permitted under the bylaw. The shop will comply with all other requirements of the zoning bylaw. The 8% height variance is being requested to allow the new shop to accommodate the storage of personal goods and to allow the pitch of the roof to match that of the existing home. A left corner side yard variance to 4.5 metres has also been requested in order to ideally place the shop on the property. We have received comment from the neighbours on the far side of Fairwinds Road, opposite the property. They have written to say they fully support the proposal, and we have received no further comments from neighbours, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any discussion from directors? Seeing none, I'll call a question on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. On the recommendation?
I'd move item B.
I second that.
Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Number 4, the one variance permit DV7D22 Fear, for receipt.
Move receipt.
I second that.
And I believe John will speak to this as well, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman. An application has been received to allow the construction of a single-family dwelling with an attached deck as close as 2.5 metres from an existing accessory building. Site topography means that the proposed house and deck addition will be located closer than the required bylaw minimum to the accessory building, and these setback requirements of 3.5 metres from main to accessory were initially brought into force to ensure sufficient requirements between buildings were met, separation requirements. Since that time, the building code has abolished building separation requirements between principal and main buildings, accessory buildings, and therefore the proposal will adhere to the BC Building Code. And although unrelated to the variance request, the impact to surrounding neighbours is negligible, with the closest neighbouring residence being 177 metres southeast of the dwelling addition, with most of this distance being comprised of forest. And like the first application we mentioned this morning, no neighbour comments have been received regarding the proposal. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thanks, John. Any discussion? Okay.
I have a
question.
question for
Go ahead.
John. Making the buildings closer, are there any effects as far as like fire service concerns or anything?
Mr. Chairman, no, there'll be no impacts of that nature on this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. On receipt, calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Recommendation?
Move item B.
We need a seconder always.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 5, development permit, DP 6D22, Nguyen. On receipt.
Move receipt.
Sorry.
Discussion?
And John will speak to this as well, I
Thank
believe.
you.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. This application is to allow the placing of clean fill on an undeveloped lot situated at 3782 South Island Highway. And as the proposed fill placement is located within 30 metres of the top of bank of a watercourse connected to the fish habitat, and is therefore within an environmentally sensitive development permit area requiring a permit. It is proposed the placing of clean fill on the property will improve drainage on the property and will be located clear of a 18-metre streamside protection and enhancement area known as a SPEAR, which was prepared by Cindy Hanna as part of a report which has made recommendations for the protection of fish habitat. And these recommendations, including the fencing of the SPEAR, sedimentation control, and post-development environmental monitoring, will also be incorporated into the ESADP document. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, John. Any discussion?
Me. I have a question.
Go ahead, Dr. Mullany.
Thank you. This is I guess, a question through the chair to staff. I noticed that in the executive summary that it mentions that there will be sedimentation control and post-development environmental monitoring, and I'm curious who is responsible for that.
Thank you, through the chair. The post-development environmental monitoring is carried out by the QUEEP. Pardon me, yes, pardon me. And the acronym is a qualified environmental professional. This is the person who prepares the environmental report under RAR. So generally, when development takes place, a report is then prepared by this individual, certifying that the conditions of the development permit have been adhered to.
Okay, I guess my question was that there's post-development environmental monitoring? So is that an ongoing process, and who pays for that?
Thank you, through the chair again. The environmental monitoring is basically there's one examination of the property after development has occurred. It's not continuous beyond that time.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Like you said, the queen.
Yeah.
I almost told you, no, it's the king.
Any further comments? Call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. A recommendation, please.
Move item B.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Item 6, Blanken Park Court Expansion Proposal for receipt.
So moved. Oh, do we get someone speaking to it?
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Staff?
And thank you, Mr. Chair. Annika will speak to this.
Thank you, through the chair to the committee. The park staff has received a request from QRS, Quad Island Rec Society, to consider phase 2 of their expansion to the tennis court facility, currently being used as a practice court area and for pickleball. The proposal would include an expansion of the area by approximately 10 feet, with the removal of some mature trees, including their root structure, and resurfacing the area and painting to allow for 2 pickleball courts. The society has been doing fundraising to support the project, but are seeking a financial contribution from the SRD up to approximately $4,400 to assist them with completing the project. The project is supported by staff. The recommendation does include, however, that staff oversee the project and that staff be authorized to reimburse the society up to $4,400 from the Area C Parks budget once staff receives their final project budget and report. Thank you.
Any discussion? Calling the question on, yes? Go ahead. All right. On receipt then, calling the question, all those in favor? And opposed, carried. And the recommendation. Go ahead.
I would move that the committee recommend that the board authorize staff to oversee the proposed court expansion and allocate a financial contribution of up to 1/3 of the total project costs to a maximum of $4,400 from the Area C Parks budget to be provided in the form of a reimbursement following receipt of a final project or budget report. And I would just like to add that I have gratitude for the thorough planning and motivation of the tennis and pickleball
Just
volunteers.
one moment, if you will, Director.
Yes?
We need a seconder before you.
Oh,
start.
what?
I'll second it.
Thank you,
All right,
Mark.
Comments?
And I'm going to assume that second part was not part of the motion.
Oh, yeah, no, that was like a new paragraph.
So we're moving a motion, so.
So if we could get the second part up there for the,
Did you just want us to move B, or do you want us to add more to B? Okay.
Yeah, you just move the motion, and then afterwards, there'll be an opportunity for comment. So go ahead if you have comments now. We're good? All right, calling the question then on that motion. All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. Number 7, scheduled committee of meetings for 2023. On receipt.
Move receipt.
I'll second that.
All right.
So, Mr. Chair, just, this is a typical East meeting schedule that we've adopted in past years. No changes to our historical schedule in there. And should the committee adopt this, attached is the schedule that we'll continue with for the remainder of the year.
Okay, calling the question on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? So that's carried. And the recommendation.
Move B.
We need number 2.
Second it.
Calling the question. All those in favor? Carried. Special budget meeting for receipt.
Second.
Calling the question on receipt.
So
Oh, staff have a
that's
comment
okay,
on
if I can speak to it.
sorry.
So I'm trying to be fluid and as new election, new directors, trying to get their feet underneath them and understand the budget process here. We've had our one-on-one meetings. We've provided a proposed year-end budget to that group. I'm not surprised we didn't see a lot of feedback, other than Director Wally, we didn't see a lot of feedback at those one-on-one meetings, which is understandable. Starting to get feedback from the group on things they'd like to see. I'll be sending out some comments to the group in the meantime. But what I think we need here is to have a special budget meeting, and I've thrown in a date the day after the board's budget meeting for us to discuss those things. So what I've put in there is we've got our year ends, we have our assessments, we've taken comments from the directors, we're still continuing to receive comments. I'll provide those back, hopefully those will give some context at the meeting. You can look at the budget and then we can continue to have further changes, amendments that you will see. Again, what I'll tend to do too is respond to all of you in terms when you have questions about the budget, is often they'll impact all of you. So Director Vonish or Director Rice, when they give me stuff, or Mawini, I will reply to everybody so that there's some context. So when we meet on the 26th, because the budgets they're owned by the board, but they're also owned by smaller, different groups in there that you'll vote on. So one director said, I'd like to see this, but it's something that a group of 4 will vote on, or it's the whole board. And I think the context is important there. So that's just a long-winded preface to say, I think we need to throw in a special budget meeting just for East. We'll have that on the 26th, and I'm optimistic what comes out of that. You'll see something closer to what you hoped or your expectations for. I can tell you optimistically, what we do when you saw your preliminary budgets, those are kind of worst-case scenario for what you'd be looking at, to give you an idea of things you may be having vision for moving forward. Those numbers are much better than what you've seen, and you'll see that on the 26th. So it gives you another opportunity to go, oh, geez, I didn't, just give some line of sight on one item that Director Vonish commented on. He said, geez, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, so give me some latitude. This one seems kind of high. I'd like to see it there. And yet, when we consolidated the year ends and assessments, the number's under what Director Vonish had put there. So lots changes, and we tend to give you the worst case. We don't want to be too optimistic, and then you go, geez, I thought it was $7. Now you're saying 14. So it's not our first rodeo. We tend to pull things back. So looking quite good, and we'll have some discussion, and you'll have a better line of sight on what they're really looking at there. So if the committee supports that, we'll have a meeting on the 26th just for this group.
Thank you for that. Just one thing, I've heard a few comments that those who are going to attend in person at the hospital board might be a little pressed to get back for 1:30. Would 2 o'clock work for staff? Okay, so.
As I always say, we're here every day, all day. So if it's 2 o'clock, that's no problem.
All right, on receipt, calling the question.
Sorry,
Yeah, that works for me. I just want to make sure that it's okay if I stay the night on the Wednesday so that I can make the Thursday. Yeah.
On receipt, all those in favor? Opposed and carried. On the recommendation? Well, let's make a motion, then you can ask a question.
I'll move B
Well, we're going to change the time to 2 o'clock?
with the change to 2 o'clock.
I'll
right.
second that.
And go ahead for comments.
Oh, thank you. I was curious, the previous preliminary budget meeting that we had individual meetings. Is this one going to be all 4 ESC directors together? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right.
if I can just add a comment to that, so I just want to give an understanding. You're always welcome, as Mike tends to say, the budget's 365 days a year. You're always welcome to give us individual comments at any time. But moving forward past our one-on-ones, now it's appropriate that when we meet as a group, we discuss the budget together. That doesn't prohibit you, like next week we'll chat about your area, that doesn't prohibit that from happening. But when we consolidate things, we'll meet moving forward now till the budget's adopted as a group to decide things. That doesn't mean you don't have input from today, tomorrow on, but I'll consolidate those things for the group and we'll meet together.
All right, calling the question on item B. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Number 9, history grant request for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
All right, we'll call the question on this one. All those in favor? Opposed and carried.
If I can, Mr. Chair, just add a little background to this. We had a request, excuse me, that all EA Service Committee summarize all grants in economic development. You'll see there's a little more information here. It was just easier for us to consolidate. More information's better than less. So if there's more here than what the request for, it was more work for us to divvy it out than put it in there. So you got it all.
Thank you. All right, item number 10, grant aid request for Cortez Island for receipt.
Move receipt.
Any discussion? All those in favor, calling the question?
History grant request?
Which one? History grant request? Yeah. We just did that.
Yeah, there was a motion to receive that was voted on and carried. Yeah.
All right, so for Cortez Island, for receipt.
Move receipt.
Okay, all those in favor? Was there any subsequent to this, or?
There's 3 options for directors to choose from.
Can I comment on some of the comments in the executive summary? No, I can do that. Okay, through the chair, I just wanted to, I appreciate the staff mentioning the process challenges that have happened here, and that I've just letting staff know that I have reached out to the Community Foundation, letting them know that recommendations should come to the director, and then the director should be interfacing with the SRD rather than the Community Foundation communicating directly to the SRD.
I'm slightly confused by that, sorry. Are you talking about grant requests?
Yeah, I'm speaking to the second paragraph of the executive summary. The committee should consider their views expressed by the foundation simply as recommendations based on criteria developed by the foundation without reference to regional district policies. And this has started before I was elected, and I just wanted to let staff know that I've been clear with the Community Foundation that they should be communicating with me and that I communicate with the SRD. And
Yes, you're right, yeah. So just on that topic, directors are allowed to have as many consultation community groups as they want. You can consult all day and all night if you want. That direction, though, ultimately comes from you. So there's no authority that any of these groups have. They're just advocacy support groups for you.
All right, so there's no subsequent motions here then? So we'll move ahead to...
Mr. Chairman, I think you're still on receipt of the report.
Okay, I'll call a question on receipt.
If I can help out as well, sorry, call the question on receipt, I apologize. And then I have a comment.
All right. All those in favor? Opposed, carried?
So again, this will just be advice and decide or choose as you want, just trying to help you along a little bit. So ultimately, there has been a request for a number of grant and aid requests here. So there was a lump group in there that we received before the election. We thought it was appropriate to hold off. We've taken your comments, Director Vonish, in the budget in allocating money in 2022 and then 2023 moving forward to represent this. And so what we do then is present some options for you to move forward on this, not to influence in any way, but there was a number of grants that went to distinct organizations, and then there was kind of a remainder of money, if you will. It would, in my view, be inappropriate to give the group, the foundation, the remainder of the money. The board has no identity of where that money is going and what it's being used for. So in light of that, I suppose if there was a recommendation, it would be that the staff would support B. Not that we need to support anything, but that's the difference in A and B. B gives the money to the groups identified, and the remainder is here.
And just to clarify that, that remaining 4,000, that would just get added to the 25 for next year, and it could be allocated at any point to a specific thing.
I think it's more appropriate and for you to communicate to folks is that when they request grant money from you, they identify what it's for, and you bring, not just, can we get 10 grand, we'll leave in the bank account and then figure it afterwards.
Yeah, I'd like to move option B.
Second.
All right. Any further comment? Okay, on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. All right, director compensation for public hearings for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
So if I get, excuse me, if I can, Mr. Chair, speak to this. We have, COVID has, I guess, included some complications for public hearings and staff, and then COVID's over for most, but not over for some. And so we made accommodations for public hearings during COVID in that there was a virtual participation. The long and the short of that never really worked very well. We didn't get great public participation virtually in that. And the current bylaw is kind of complicated, and in an effort talking with the chair, I personally would like to simplify the public hearing compensation process. It's about attendance. There's work to be done in public hearings, whether you go to the public hearing or not. There's preparation before the public hearing, whether you attend or not. You go to it, and then there's work to be done afterwards, and you come here. So in my mind, it's greater effort for us to support public hearings virtually for directors. I think it costs more money for the organization, and there's challenges because we have islands in here. And it's my attempt to help simplify that process and give directors more options and not have the compensation be an issue or related to it. So my suggestion in this report is to make an annual stipend for public hearing pay, which would eliminate the requirement to physically attend, virtually attend, and you are going to be compensated annually for your work to do with public hearings, and it's not going to be related to your attendance to them. I think as a greater organization, there's more fluidity to that, and there's a greater cost savings in staff supporting those. So my desire in doing this is to simplify the compensation bylaw, make an annual stipend for that, working with the chair, come up with a number that seems to be a average claimable for public hearings to make that a neutral number of what's been done in the past.
Thank you. And just speaking in support of that, the greatest volume of our work in public hearings is reviewing the documents afterwards, like that last 700 pages, which we're obligated to do. This isn't a choice. This is part of the job. So the actual attendance is nice to have people present, but the most important thing is what comes afterwards as we review those documents, figure out what's in the best interest of the public, and make a decision based on it. So I fully support this, and I think we should go ahead with it. So anyway, we're open for discussion.
I have a question. Through to the CAO. Are you suggesting that there will not be the ability to have, sorry, Tom. Are you suggesting that there won't be a possibility of virtual attendance at public hearings in the future?
I suppose there's always the ability to do it, but I would prefer to do it on request. To do it to support the directors, as Director Wally has said, is a lot of time and effort on staff just so the director can attend that, and it's unnecessary. There has been, again, very poor uptake by the community, but if you have a public hearing, a specific one that you say you want it to be virtual, that's fine, but it's not connected to the directors. I'd like to separate that from the directors. As Director Wally said, you have a load of work to do with the public hearing. It shouldn't really be tied to your attendance. So I'm basically removing that. And if there's a public hearing that comes up that you want specifically to have virtual attendance in, it will be for the public, not the director. So we still have that ability to do if you have one. I just want to separate the directors out for that. The effort we have to do just to support the virtual directors' attendance is not worth it, if that makes sense to you.
So I had the opportunity already in my short time as director to have chaired 3 different public hearings, and I was really grateful for the presence of my electoral area directors, whether they were in person or online. So I think what you're saying is that in the future, if we there won't be like, it wasn't the virtual attendance wasn't designed for community input. It was just like a screen that was sort of permitting the directors to attend and listen in virtually, but that is what you're trying to move away from. Is that correct?
Not move away from, give the director the liberty to choose to either be there or not, but not have that decision tied to compensation. So directors can still show up to support, they cannot. I can tell you I've come from other regional districts that have much larger electoral area directors, and it is highly unusual that you would get more than the area director at those. And I believe part of the attendance here, because it's unnecessary, part of the attendance here has been tied to compensation. And I don't think that's really reasonable or fair. And so I'm just trying to separate their attendance from compensation. They can still attend. And, there's money for travel, whatever that's associated with it. But it's not tied to the compensation and their attendance are not linked together. They can still come. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But it's unusual here that we have done that historically. I personally, over 30 years, have worked for 4 regional districts and probably 200 elected officials. I've never seen the whole group show up to a public hearing. It's unusual, and I don't want to tie it to compensation. So I'm just breaking that umbilical cord and leaving it up to each individual director.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Should you support that?
Thank you.
Anything further? On receipt, we'll call the question. All those in favor? And on recommendation? Need a mover?
Move B.
I'll second that.
All right, calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. Bylaws. Bylaw 477, Electoral Area D rezoning LeBron for receipt.
Move receipt.
Nothing from staff, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any discussion? Call the question. On receipt, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Recommendation?
Move B.
Second.
Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item C?
Move C.
Second.
Second. Oh,
Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Correspondence. Littleton Community Club for receipt.
second.
Move receipt.
Oh, damn, I thought you were saying that. Move.
Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. Director's reports.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if Director Vanish has a subsequent for the item just received. If he does, this would be the time to do it.
Do we have some?
I have questions about it.
Sure. So procedurally, it's correspondence. The board has historical practice to receive any correspondence that's addressed to it. So staff don't have recommendations, anything. It's there. Do make a motion, don't make a motion, all up to you.
Yeah, I guess it's a comment. I just confused by it because it seems like this was already in their budget request for, as part of hall funding requisition. Was that part of their budget? And I'm just confused why they would have sent it like this.
We, again, procedurally, if it's addressed to the board, it goes on the board. Sometimes I don't even read the correspondence, so I don't know why they sent it. I don't know the impetus of it. I have no information. So if it's there, you read it, if you're fine with it, you don't need to do anything.
So I just have one procedural comment, that if you do have a subsequent motion to make after there's receipt where there's no recommendation on the screen, say during receipt, speak up and say, I'd like to make a subsequent motion, then I'll know not to hurry on to the next item, that you've got something else to add. All right, thank you. Okay, we're on to director's reports then. Derelict boats on Cortez Islands.
Thank you, Chair. This is part of a motion I'd like to make just as Cortez community, and I think a lot of coastal communities are facing an increasing number of derelict boats that cause environmental concern. There's also a growing number of liveaboards on boats, and it is in some cases it is a sort of a last choice housing option for these people. And some people live aboard, very well, and it's a very conscious choice. But I'm looking for a report from staff on sort of best practices that other communities have used to address the growing number of derelict and liveaboards, given the environmental and social concerns surrounding them. So I have a motion in response to a growing number of liveaboard and derelict boats in Cortez harbors. Staff bring a report to the EASC on how other communities have best handled the social and environmental challenges it poses.
If I can, Mr. Chair, just a quick editorial comment. Props to Director Vanish. It makes it much simpler for the chair and the rest of us if you have motions and you forward them to us, and they're up on the screen. So Director Rice gets one later too as well. So very helpful to the chair and to us.
Yeah, and copy me on the email that you send, so I know it's coming.
Okay.
All right, do we have a seconder?
I will second that.
Discussion? All right, go ahead.
I'm happy that you brought this forward, Director Vanesh, because it is a concern that we are facing also on Quadra Island as well. And we have boats that break up and wash ashore every winter.
Thanks, Director Mohini. I'm hoping that the report will be useful for Cortez, but other communities within the district and even other communities as well.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Pedestrian access, Ocean Grove School for receipt.
Move receipt.
Oh, second.
Discussion?
Yes, I'd like to talk on this. This is an initiative that I would like to direct staff to pursue. A little bit of background history on this is that there's a right-of-way access between two properties that are on Crawford, and it's a very quick way for kids to get to the Ocean Grove School. The only issue with the access is that Moti feels that it was never intended for public use, so therefore they don't want to maintain it. Because of that, over the years, there's been a problem with a tree that has been ongoing, and we don't seem to be able to get any traction or leverage in terms of being able to deal with this tree. So the hope is that if SRD can get public access permit, that would allow us the opportunity to actually deal with the tree, because it is becoming quite a liability for Area D. Thank you.
Will you have a subsequent motion? All right, first of all, on receipt then. Call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. And then your subsequent.
And that is the motion on screen, so I hope that the directors will approve that. Thank you.
That staff be directed, well, we need someone to make that motion verbally. Could you do that verbally?
Yep. That staff be directed to contact Moti for the possibility of a permit for pedestrian access over the right-of-way access that is located at 380 Crawford Road in Ocean Grove School.
Seconder? Director Vanesh. All right, any further comment? All those in favor? Opposed and carried. And number 3, Fire Protection Study, Gold River Highway. Director Rice will provide a verbal report.
I would like to pursue a fire study for the residents that are up in the Gold River and Strathcona Lodge. This came about when I was out talking to residents last year, and currently there is about 50 households up there and they don't have any fire service whatsoever. So I think this is an opportunity to express some of the residents' concerns and see if there is something. So my understanding is SRD has lots of experience with this, so I'm hoping that we can get a good report that might give some direction on what we can do for the folks up there.
Now, if I might just ask, are you looking for an Area D service for this?
Right now, I would be looking to both create a service and to have staff come back with a further report.
Okay, so you have a motion?
Did we not get a motion on that? Oh, I gave you too early props on that. 50%.
The motion would be that to have staff prepare a report for a potential
Go
fire
slow so they can type.
service.
Go slow so Edith can
Yep.
type.
She's a fast typist.
So just some clarity on the motions. As long as I understand what the intent and what it's for, I'm happy with it. So potential fire service, say on the Gold River Highway.
Yep.
Okay, Director Rice has moved that. Does anyone care to second it? Further comment? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. New business. And we need a motion for termination.
I'll make a motion to terminate the meeting.
Mr. Chair, just a comment if I could before we terminate. Just for those directors who may not have attended East meetings in the past. So all of the motions that were made today, the recommendations, they will be going to the next board meeting to be ratified before staff action them. So just so the committee members are aware of that.
Thank you, Mr. Yates.
Can you explain, Tom, what that means actually?
It actually means that board is a decision-making body and the ESC is one of many recommendation bodies.
Thank you.
Right, the question on termination, all those in favor? Opposed and carried. Thank you, everyone. That was good.